Welcome back to Combat Sports Weekly. This is the part of the show where we're joined by a guest. Today, we're joined by one of the best striking coaches in the world from Jackson's Winklejohn's MMA, Brandon Gibson.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure.
To be here.
Great to have you. Obviously, you're coming off one of probably the greatest weekends, I think, of Jackson's MMA and Winklejohn's, existence, with Holm making her debut. One, what did you think of her? And, give her a grade.
You're right. It was a big weekend for the gym. We have so many champions and a great history, but Holly is such a staple of our dojo, and the people that grew up there, the people from Albuquerque know what a big deal she is. So it was really cool to see her on that national stage. I would give her an A. She stayed composed. She felt like a big co-main event. It was on a big card. Awesome for MMA, women's MMA especially. And she went out there and implemented her will. I think she fought a very smart fight. Very technical, great feints, and she defended the takedown.
Now, there was a lot of criticism, or some criticism online, where people expected her just to come out like Mike Tyson. So what do you have to say to that? I mean, that's who she is, a technical fighter.
Sure. She was looking for that head kick, and props to Pennington. She's an experienced fighter. She's fought in plenty of tough competition on the big stage, and defensively, she was able to stay tight on some of Holly's bigger attacks.
You went to Invicta also, and you also watched the UFC with women headlining the card. So as far as women's MMA, how do you feel about them in the sport? How do you feel the momentum's going? And you don't have to change your answer because I'm sitting here.
It really was a great weekend. I was able to go to Invicta, and Invicta just had a cool scene. I've been to a couple of them before, but I loved how it was the night before the UFC in the same town. And the Invicta arena was filled with stars. I saw lots of UFC gold there, UFC stars. Dana White himself was out, and it just had a cool vibe. And the women showed up and fought that night. Cyborg was incredible. The co-main event was absolutely incredible.
Fight of the night for sure.
And I think women's MMA really represented and stood up. And just like Holly was ready for the big lights, I think all the women that fought this weekend in Invicta and UFC were ready for the big lights.
Now, you have a lot of women at the gym. How important was that for them to finally be in the limelight and the spotlight like this?
I think it was great. And that Jackson's is one of those premier schools. Not only do we have men champion, like Jon Jones, we also have a great women's team, and Jody's part of it, Holly's part of it, and it'll just add more fuel to that fire. It's always cool to be in the gym when somebody's just coming off a big win. It gets everybody going, and I know when Holly comes back in that dojo, everybody's going to feel good and be ready to train that much harder.
Yeah, now you're that cool, calm coach that just chills in the background while Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn, of course, get their praise, but you're not too shabby of a coach yourself. Tell us how you got started, especially in the combat community here locally.
Sure. I grew up in Albuquerque. I started doing karate in the Southeast at a young age. I loved it. From karate, I really got into boxing, and we weren't from a wealthy family, but that's perfect because that's where a lot of boxers come from. And I would take the bus down to Jack Candelaria Community Center, East San Jose Boxing Club, and I would just learn how to box. I'd use my karate skills. I've always been passionate about fighting, and through some friends I'd met in that community, they said, "Hey, you think you're tough? Go to Mike Winklejohn's gym and see how tough you really are." And I started training under Coach Winklejohn, got a bunch of licks early on, and Coach Wink changed my game, and we merged with Jackson's about a decade ago. And those two men, Greg Jackson and Mike Winklejohn, have been my two biggest mentors and influences. And I think I've been fortunate enough to train under the two most experienced coaches in the game.
How has the local scene, I guess, improved since you were a fighter yourself? How do you feel? Obviously, it's been here in the limelight. The city itself has become a mecca for the sport.
Absolutely. It's cool that we get all these international fighters coming in. I'm training Alistair Overeem right now. We have Andre Arlovsky. We have great fighters from all over the world. But I take extra pride in the guys that are from here, I'm training young Joby Sanchez right now. He's one of my favorites. He's a South Valley kid. Albuquerque born and bred, and just like Carlos and Diego Sanchez and Holly and Jody, it's special to me. It's special to me.
With that, one thing that I appreciate about you as a figure in MMA is that you're always rooting for the guys from New Mexico, whether they're from Jackson's or not. Tim Means had a big fight and a huge win, and we actually had the honor of having him in the studio last week, and so. I think that's really awesome that you just root for the 505 guys, and that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim looked fantastic on Saturday night. I got to talk to him a little bit after the fight, and what a brilliant performance on his part too. Very composed. He didn't rush. He didn't over-anticipate. he stayed calculated, and that was a highlight reel if I've ever seen one.
Now, you're primarily known as, I think, to everybody else outside of New Mexico as one of Jon Jones' primary striking coaches. What is that like to train the best fighter in the world day in, day out? And how much do you learn, since you're the coach, how much do you actually learn from such an athletic specimen like him?
You know, I would say Jon and I are a collaboration. I definitely coach him. I think I've given him a lot of tools over the years, technically and even emotionally in some sense, you know, helping him go into battle, prepare for that. I think that's one of the areas where Jon and I really click. He says I'm his Bundini Brown. And, you know, Bundini was one of those guys from Muhammad Ali that always got him ready and prep. But along with that, we ripped some mitts, and we were always constantly improving. And I try not to think of Jon as the greatest right now. You know, I mean, right now, the way I look at it, we're getting to fight for a UFC title. It's not us defending it for the 9th time. It's, hey, we get to fight for the world title. So I think part of my job with Jon is keeping him humble and disciplined and rooted and consistently improving.
How difficult of a task is that, especially in that division? Every fight, it seems like it's tougher than the one before. It seems like it's this never-ending hill that you guys are climbing with him because of the competition and the murder's row of opponents that he has to face at light heavyweight.
That's what we get out of bed for. That's the challenge I live for. That's the stage I want to be doing the best on. I love competing against these amazing fighters and amazing camps that they come from, and developing a better game plan, developing the better strategy, and having that fighter ready to go when that bell rings.
Did you ever think in the very beginning that you would be training the likes of a Jon Jones? And, you know, like, do you like, you know what, I'm going to train the best in the world, or I am going to be the best in the world, or I'm going to be part of the best in the world? Was that a goal of yours, or is it just something that happened on your journey, your path?
Yeah, you know, I try to think of it like I love it so much. I'm so passionate about it that big doors continue to open, and I'm always ready for that opportunity. I think I've worked hard to be where I'm at, and I think there's no bluffing at this level. I can't BS a guy like Alistair Overeem, a K1 Grand Prix champ. You know, like I either have the skills or I don't, and I have to earn that with each fighter, earn that trust, earn that commitment through each workout, each day.
Yeah. Now, besides, I guess, fighters, there's athletes, professional athletes that you're training. Recently, of course, it's hard to miss on your Instagram that you're training NFL football player Lance Briggs. I mean, how different is it to be training a guy that's not in there every day, and how are his skills?
You know, 99% of the time, I just want to be training professional athletes. I want to be training that top level. I want to be training those contenders, and I want to be helping develop the up-and-comers for the next generation. Lance is a special exception. He hit me up. We hit it off. And he came in, you know, he's a champion-level athlete himself. Very disciplined, very motivated, and he has a pretty strong background in boxing himself. He loves to box during the offseason, and he says it helps him in his NFL game. And we did like a little trial run. We hit it off, and I love working with him. So Lance is a special exception. I don't think I'm going to be taking on too many cases like that, but I've definitely been enjoying working with him.
You juggle a lot of different hats, you know, and you actually have a full-time job, and fighters are a full-time job, super selfish people, I know. And you have a beautiful family, and I feel like you give everything 100%, and it's really awesome to see, you know, you're very selfless, and the sport's really lucky to have you, you know, and to be here in New Mexico. Is there anyone you want to thank, or?
Man, definitely my team. You know, Greg and Wink, my family, my beautiful wife Colleen, my kids, and all these fighters that give to me so much as well. You know, it's a 50-50 road, and I get just as much from them as I think they get from me. So
great. Brendan, join us for the roundtable. I think you have probably some good words to say for the verbal sparring match.
Championship rounds, let's go.
We'll see you guys on the other side.